Order. The time is 12 noon. I wish to welcome you to the Superintendent's Workshop being held in the Joe N. Idlett Jr. TEC. I ask that out of respect to everyone, please silence all electronic devices. Also, if you have any material you wish to share with a board member, please give that to our Executive Assistant, Mrs. Moray. She's seated over there. We'll take a break every 2 hours if needed before that. Let me know, board members. At this time, I'd like to recognize the Superintendent to explain the purpose of this workshop.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today's workshop is to present information to the board, have conversations regarding items that will ultimately come for approval in an upcoming business meeting. Our first item will be presented by Mr. Green.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Through the chair. So just wanted to spend a minute and recap a little bit of the budget process for our public that we've been going through literally since January. For the past 8 months, staff and this board and even the community have been going through and developing the 2024-2025 tentative budget, and on September 9th, you'll be presented with the final budget. So that process literally started in January, February, going through all department budgets and doing zero-based budgeting, where we were able to review those budgets early on and set those. We then moved into our staff allocation model. So at that time, we met with every school, went through their staffing allocations based on their FTE, and were able to develop our staffing plan, which is the basis for us moving forward. And those are formula driven, as we have covered several times. Once we had our staffing plan, we moved into building the budget based on the conference report. So in March, we got the governor's budget, House Bill 5001, which is appropriations. This set off not on certified millage rates, but this set off our ability to start building the actual budget on numbers provided by DOE. We then went into June 10th, and we had a budget workshop, and on June 10th, we reviewed last year's budget in detail. We reviewed the timelines for the budget throughout the year, the various calculations, and when we would get that information. And at that time, we reviewed the budget impactors we were facing, which was around $14.8 million that we had shared how we had offset those through our budget planning. Starting in June, July, and August, and all through that portion, we had individual board briefings where we discussed the budget, we discussed the need for a tax anticipation note, a TAN, and several times along the way, Dr. Moore presented, I think it was February 2nd, to the Taxpayers Association. And then in July, Dr. Moore and I met with the Board of Directors of the Taxpayers Association. So continued communication through that process, which ultimately resulted in approval and a recommendation from that body to the board on the tentative budget. On July 16th, we met and we reviewed the truth in millage, all of the millage rates. We published those in the TC Palm on the 19th as required by law, and then we came back on the 22nd and you approved those certified millage rates. On the 29th, we had that special meeting to adopt the tentative millage rates and the tentative budget. So since that time, we have been meeting with individual board members, and I just wanted to pause for a minute to thank each one of you for taking the time, whether it was remotely over Teams, whether we did it in person, whether it was over the phone. Each of you, we spent a large amount of time, hours plus. Each of you had tab. So I also want to thank our Director of Finance, Kim Copeman, for joining me in those meetings with the level of detail, professionalism, and experience that she brought to those meetings. But your questions helped us in some things we're working on in developing the final budget and clarifying some language for the public that might be able to help, as well as some things we can improve upon in the budget book as we move forward next year developing that. So at this point, we are in the middle of the internal audits account. Our annual financial audit has begun. A federal audit of Title I has begun. The team is working on the annual financial report, which will be presented to you on September 9th, and the team is working on the final budget, which will present it to you. So if you go by the parking lot on any of the past weekends, you will see that there have been quite a few people here working on that, and I want to thank them again for that dedication. So as that final budget approaches, the millage rates were certified. You won't see any changes there, but you'll see some slight changes in revenue as we got our additional tax revenue at the end of the year in, as we closed out all of the accounts, as we made some modifications to extended day based on rates. You'll see food service shored up as we got all of the bills in at the end of the year. So you'll see some minor changes in those. Most of it won't change. The debt service won't change, your capital. So we're working on those changes now, and we'll be presenting to you. But in that process, what we do is we evaluate our cash flow. And we look at, okay, based on this budget and based on what we have in the bank and based on our payroll, we use Ford & Associates, Neighbor, Giblin, to help us, our bond counsel, help us analyze those cash flows to see what our position will be from now until November, December. As we've discussed before, we are one of the districts who have over 70% of our funding comes from local sources. And we talked about in the formula, state versus local, and because of our property values, the majority of funding is collected through that required local effort that we must levy. Based on that required local effort, our tax dollars coming to us will not be received until the tax collector actually collects what she needs to do. So that generally is in November. We might get a payment in October, but November is the heavy hitter. So to make it from July 1st to November, we go through those cash flow analysis, and as we've discussed in briefings, our financial advisors and bond counsels figured out that we're going to be short a certain amount. They have a formula that determines, based on that amount, what do we need to borrow to make sure we can effectively operate the school district during that period of time. So this evening, you'll have on the agenda a resolution for a tax anticipation note, or a TAN. And that resolution awards the tax anticipation note to Wells Fargo. We went through an invitation to bid process. We had 5 different banks that bid on it. And based on their overall lowest cost of interest, Wells Fargo was the most responsive bidder. That will be for a $15 million note due in December 18th, a short-term note. That rate is 4.45%, which is 0.04% less, 0.04% less than last year. Last year we borrowed $12 million. This year we're borrowing $15 million. Last year the interest was $194,000. We're borrowing a little bit more. The interest is $8,000 more, or $202,000 this year. The cost of issuance for that TAN is the same, $29,000. That's all your closing costs, your fees, your financial advisors. So at the end of the day, it is $8,000 more in interest. However, as we've discussed in briefings, we invest those dollars into our bank accounts until we need it, as we start paying them out in payroll. And that interest rate is currently over 5%. So we're borrowing at 4.4, we're investing it at over 5. We don't get to keep it all in the bank that entire time, or we would actually make quite a bit of money. Because we pay it out in October as we need to for payroll. And as we've discussed, that mitigates a large majority of that $202,000. Last year, it was a total cost of around $19,000 for the issuance of that TAN. So this evening, you will be approving a resolution for that tax anticipation note with Wells Fargo. And with that, that is pretty much a summary of where we've been, what you as a board has been working on, what staff have been working on. I know we've had, a lot of meetings and workshops along the way, and I just wanted to thank you for your feedback and input along the way. And with that, we'll open it up for questions.
Yeah, before we open up the questions, I wanted to say thank you for recognizing Kim and your whole team for everything you've done. Also, not only did you meet with all board members, but I appreciate the fact that you took a meeting with myself and a member of the Taxpayers Association with any questions they had to be able to respond to our request. And so I appreciate that. All right, board members, anybody want to say anything? Mr. McDonald?
I'll just say, yes, I thank you for all the work that you've done a great job, and recognize that in the presentation with the Taxpayers Association, that they came out with a conclusion that they endorsed the budget as being recommended. So that's an outside, but I think an important confirmation that we're on the right track.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Dr. Jones?
Just again, thank you. A lot of questions that came forward, and you and your team answered them very well, excuse me. I just think that, and not only then, but you answer them once a day if I have other ones, so, and I appreciate that. And I've talked to Mr. Lunsford with the Taxpayers Association, again, just a recognition that we're doing our taxes right by our community is very positive. Thank you.
Dr. Puska, anything? No? Mr. Rosario?
Yeah, thank you so much for meeting with me and Kim and the entire team, obviously. I just want to, I suppose, as we move forward, I know that there were some questions that I had that were going to be addressed and corrected. I suppose moving forward, as you plan, I would like the board to be more involved. You said that the process began for you all in January and February. The board should be a part of that process at that time, at least the discussions of how it begins and what happens, rather than wait until the summer for us to receive the entire booklet. And that would, I think, help kind of, you use the word mitigate, and I think that's a good word, help kind of, if there are any questions along the way, we can kind of bring it up as you go so you're not recreating the wheel towards the end. The other thing is the pie chart. I'm still stuck on that pie chart, right? Because we have 41% for instruction and 40% for facilities. Yes, I brought it up. And I want to apologize because at our last meeting, regarding the budget, or maybe it's not really an apology. It's that I had a light bulb moment at our last meeting. I think that's what it was. At our last meeting, my light bulb went off, and I realized in looking at that chart and in looking at individual schools as we were engaged in the conversation, it was that there were other things that were being counted under instruction. The entire school facility is being counted in under instructional, what is that called? Let me just get the name specific. Let me go to my academic success. It's all being tied under academic success. So things like petroleum, electric, whatever other costs are involved in running a school building. It could even be painting a school. Well, that's capital. But you get the idea. So all of those other things that are included within a school budget are also part of academic success. I mean, we could probably argue that, anyone could argue that bringing students to school in a school bus is part of academic success. I mean, there's so many things that are part of academic success, which is true. But when we're looking at our budget, I think that we need to not do that, because it appears now that my light bulb went off, those things, in my mind, academic success is classroom related, right? Teacher related, professional development, curriculum, those things that are driving direct impact for students one-on-one in terms of their learning and their outcomes, testing, or whatever other things that are included in that. And these other things are not. And so I'd like to see a pie chart that is literally academic success, in my mind, what that would look like, not including all these other things. And so, so a lot of my questions last time were really part of that light bulb going off, like, wait a minute, that shouldn't be included in this. And I don't want us to inflate that number, because truly our academic numbers should really be higher than everything else. Even though I know that, it costs a lot of money to run a district, I want to be able to see that right balance, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
So I hope
certainly.
moving forward, as we also move towards changing, recreating our new strategic plan, that could be a part of the process too.
Thank you. Appreciate all the feedback.
Okay.
Madam Chair, the next item is a annual review, which incorporates the impact of our district strategic plan. One of the most innovative things I think we have collectively done is align our district strategic plan to my evaluation. So although it may be uncomfortable to talk about at times, if you're going to put your livelihood where it matters the most, you put it aligned to the impact the school system would like to have. And at the end of the day, I have been chasing impact for about 26 years. Chasing impact when I first discovered the role adults can have on children when they have an unwavering commitment and belief to be in service of those children. And that collectively has been the impact that I have been chasing ever since I observed that as a counselor in an alternative school. So let's talk about impact. I thought I set that up very nicely. Kristen, this is part of your evaluation.
Are we missing a battery?
So as you can see from this slide, we have a very attractive student body. There we go.
There you go.
One too many.
I think it was just pointed at the wrong.
Point backwards?
No, Sam is doing it.
Oh. I'll just raise my hand, Sam. No, we're good. All right, so this is my closing of my 5th year. So December will be 5 years for me. You all know the story coming in. Shortly after arriving, the pandemic hit, which ultimately has changed the face of public education over the course of the last 5 years. We have had a lot of success, a lot of struggles, a lot of challenges, but ultimately each year we continue to grow our impact. This has been the best year we have had to date. And it is a compounded impact, meaning we grow on the previous year's success. So the fact that we are able to hit or make progress on 97% of this board's strategic plan for the year 2024 is something we all collectively should be very, very proud of. This is a slide that I have used for a number of years. Matter of fact, in my pre-pandemic life, this was a slide that we created to highlight the need for change. And what I did is I took all of the like counties, as well as my previous county and our neighboring county, to make the case to the community that we needed to drastically change what we were doing inside of our public schools. And when we present this slide, up comes Indian River County first. And what you are going to see in 18-19, that was the last year before the pandemic, and it was the last year scores were recorded that I was actually the new superintendent. 47% of our schools were A or B. I compared that to Charlotte, which under 40% of their schools were C's, and a higher percent A's and B's in both categories for Charlotte. Then I compared us to Martin, where Martin had just at 50% A's, and then the remaining B's and C's. You looked at Brevard. Brevard, over 40%. The majority of their schools were A's. And then we compared it to Miami-Dade. And what I said, and I remember it vividly because I probably said it 100 times, if other districts who are the same size or other districts that have significantly more challenging bodies in which they serve in terms of diversity, in terms of language spoken, within the students in which they serve, we should not be satisfied with the majority of our schools being a C. And we started talking about that every single school in this district should be an A, and that we, in fact, should be an A district. So over the course of the last 4.5 years, the standards have changed. There's a brand-new assessment system in place. That assessment system actually raised the bar, so the percent of schools, or percent of points that you needed to be an A or a B or a C ultimately increased. Throw in a pandemic and significant variations. And what you'll find as we move to the current outcome is that look at the variance between what's changing. So if you were to look at each county where they were in 1819 and where they are today, you're going to see Indian River County having the most drastic change. Well, maybe not the most drastic change. Other counties have had drastic change, but it's a negative change in terms of the addition of the D schools, the lowest percent of schools being A's in other counties. Drastic increase in C schools. But Indian River County, 95% of your schools are an A or a B. 47% of your schools were A or a B in 1819. So the work is absolutely significant, and the overall impact has been absolutely outstanding. So as I go through the presentation, this kind of will highlight each of the 5 different areas in our district strategic plan, but I want the board to begin thinking about what's next, because ultimately, we're not satisfied with where we're at. So yes, 95% of our schools were at A or a B. We will celebrate that throughout the year. This is what we established in one of the first area, which is academic success. We established a baseline. So if you look at the baseline, we established targets for the end of every single year. So if you looked at our targets, we were able to obtain the target in all with the exception of 2 areas, which is ELA 3% of bluff, where we made actual progress. That's a state ranking. And then mathematics 3 or plus, where we made progress. But we were able to hit all of the other areas, which is absolutely outstanding. This is the best we've ever done in academic performance in this specific area. We were intentional in really looking at if we want to continue to grow the school system. We want to continue to grow choice in our county. We have a slide coming later in this presentation that speaks of the impact that choice and a shift in policy that took place 4 years ago was ultimately having on this. But Dodgertown Steam Park is off and running, receiving a lot of attention. They are having an absolutely outstanding start. Just receiving some great feedback there regarding the instruction that's being observed in the first 10 days of school. In terms of our classical K-8, the county's first private or publicly funded K-8 school, we've had the opportunity to meet with staff. It is at Pelican Island. We're working on bringing a plan back to this board in October to approve that plan so we can provide opportunities to our community where there is a demand. So just absolutely outstanding work in that specific area. Choice has been a catalyst for our change. So really looking at the changes within choice over time. Each year we have to update what we're marketing to our community. So gone are the days within the school system in which a neighborhood school services the neighborhood kids. The reality is we want all of our schools, whether it's a charter school, whether it's a private school or a public school, to compete for the right to educate our community's children. And we want to provide varying choices. So we are able to update those pathways and make significant changes and then market what we're doing. And what has been the impact of that? We're seeing stabilization in enrollment. So we all know that we've lost a significant number of kids from 1819. We are basically the same level of enrollment today as we were this time last year. So that is absolutely outstanding. Our forecasting model has worked efficiently and effectively. There's not a number of teachers that we have to add or a number of teachers that we have to condense or slide over. It was right where we needed to be. So that speaks to our creation of our budget. Safety, culture, and climate. This is the second category of our strategic plan. Once again, we were able to hit all of our categories except in making progress in least restrictive environment. So we were able to go from 40, the baseline, to an outcome of 22, which ultimately is right where we want to be when you're looking at the size of our particular district. I said from the very beginning of the school year, the students with the discipline responses, we're not going to hit that target because we changed the code of conduct under the leadership of this board, which made a solid stance on cell phones. And because of that, we knew there was going to be this reactionary change to enforcing that new policy. And the truth is, if you watch the news, every other surrounding county is trying to act like Indian River County, and they're in those same struggles now that we were in last year. And we just want to continue to encourage them to stay the course, and you'll see drastic increases in the time on task in classrooms. So that is why we knew we weren't going to hit that specific one. You look at our subgroups. Our subgroups, everyone knows what a subgroup is. We were able to go in math from 38% of the subgroups making progress to 25% in science, 75% to 88%. The one subgroup that is not is actually Asian, which is a very high-performing small subgroup. So in terms of some of our county's most fragile students, we are seeing significant improvements. A large piece of our A comes on our ability to disaggregate data to meet the needs of children, all children, and be very, very specific in making sure our lowest 25% shows significant improvement. Safety, culture, and climate, we once again continue to lead the way in terms of the work that we're doing. Our safety compliance audits are 100%. Our progress in our subgroups as referenced, and then our culture and climate focus areas realized 6 of 7 areas, which we just ultimately reviewed. Significant improvements, as I mentioned, our students with disability going from 40 to 22nd. We are proud about that, and ultimately the level of instruction for our students with disabilities and providing the opportunity to be in regular classroom experiences has drastically shot those scores through the roof. Communication and engagement is the ability to get out there in the community and engage and work with parents. And that has been just a way of my work and ultimately the system's work over the course of the last 4.5 years. So the biggest one that I like to point out is the parent connection to focus. We're only 59% of our families were engaging with focus, where now it's 95%. This is checking the grade book. This is making sure you're interacting with parents. It is significant in terms of the service that we're able to provide, getting out into the community, whether it is a community organization that is local, whether it is bringing school systems in from across the state. Superintendent presentations, I feel like I present every time the superintendents come together. Whether it is the policy performance practice and bringing other school systems in, or presenting at conferences in which we're being asked to present and share our outcomes, really bringing a level of credibility to the state, across the state regarding our progress. We were acknowledged, or I was acknowledged as the Pineapple Report for Academic Achievement, which was presented right here at the last superintendent's meeting. That was absolutely outstanding. A number of our county commissioners or city councils brought us in to acknowledge our first day. Cognia recognized us as the Cognia Value Driven Award of Excellence, which is the one award that they gave away during the 2023-24 school year, so we were excited to receive that. Now looking at talent development, that's growing others within our system. So retention of highly effective teachers, we're now at 96%. Some of the success that we're going to have this school year we'll simply hang our hat on the fact that we were able to retain high-quality educators. So we hired about 50 less teachers this year than any other year in which I've been here, which means those teachers who return, they have been trained, they have got the support and development, and they hit the ground running on day one. So we're very, very excited about that, and we're continuing to grow our African-American Hispanic teachers. Ultimately, our focus is to hire the absolute best educator, and if we're doing so in the most appropriate way, we'll see those numbers be reflective of our community. Talent development and support, this is, as I said, 96%. Teacher salary has been a commitment for this board. We've gone from 26th in the state to 7th in the state in teacher salary, so really mining the budget to put our priorities in place. We would not be retaining 96% of our highly skilled staff if we weren't compensating them. They are, when you look at average teacher pay, the highest paid on the Treasure Coast. They have the highest average salary, 7th highest average salary across the state of Florida. Organizational fiscal responsibility, I've said this publicly a number of times, although we are very proud of our academic achievements, the right sizing of this district's budget is probably one of our largest accomplishments. Creating the behaviors and the habits within the organization at all levels of management to be responsible for the dollars, the limited dollars that we have, so we do not have to be reactive in correcting the budget, but proactive in identifying priorities and making sure that we're driving the implementation of this district's strategic plan. This is an area in which we should really be celebrating. Our fund balance remains to be extremely strong, stronger than it has ever been. We've been able to compensate our employees significantly better than surrounding districts. As evidenced by tonight, we'll close compensation deals with both of our different unions. I cover that information. This is a slide that I was referencing. In 1819, 1,947% of our students participated in choice, which is a small percent, where now this year you have over 5,000 students participating in choice. So the fact that we're able to maintain enrollment from last year to this year, this strategy that the board put into place in February or March of 2020 allowed us to compete for the right to educate our students. So we've moved to almost just over a third of our students participating in choice programs. And as we move forward, we want to continue to grow that number. We've been very strategic in being committed to putting money where it matters the most. So $4.5 million out of this building and into classrooms by being very, very strategic in how we're going to reduce funding away from children. So we've been very, very excited to do that, and we will continue to make that a priority as we create the conditions in the organizational habits and behaviors to downsize the system to maximize the opportunities to pay our teachers. As we move into this upcoming school year, we're still following the same structure where we will close out the 5-year strategic plan. So we are going into the last year of our district's strategic plan. And the targets that this board set 5 years ago will be the targets for 2025. And based on the last 4 years of implementation, those targets are extremely attainable for us as a system. Some of that strategic focus has to be on instructional and programmatic innovation, highlighting in choice and innovating the options of what's taking place in schools, inside classrooms, in terms of design, length of time, pulling curriculums together. There is substantial work to do. Public education, the structure was designed in 1910, 1920. It needs to change. It was designed to meet children the needs of children 100 years ago, but you don't learn science in 90 minutes and then math in 90 minutes or 60 minutes. You have to be able to modify what the experience looks like to address the needs of today's children. Sustaining instructional improvements, which means there has been substantial amount of time by myself and staff to build capacity of world-class instructional leaders, principals and assistant principals, world-class teachers, making sure they have the ability to create meaningful experiences, to differentiate instruction for all of the children in that classroom, while at the same time invest and create the curriculum experts to provide that support. We now know we need to be able to sustain that work, where I move my focus to instructional innovation. We've built the capacity, we've built the systems. We need to continue to be reliant on those structures and systems to continue to grow in the quality of instruction without allowing us to move and grow the experience within the system. And then a heavy focus on culture of service, which is every principal will be writing a KPI related to their evaluation. Every cabinet member, every district employee is really looking at service. And as we look at each of those specific areas, this year a strong focus in reinventing the experience at Dodgertown, the creation of the Classical Magnet School, highlighting and continuing to grow the Gifford Middle School Advanced Studies Academy, which has really taken off, and then enhancing that job-embedded professional learning to support the innovation. And looking at our sustained instructional support, shift teachers on assignment to content specialists, so we've really shifted a reality of a teacher on a special assignment to a content expert to provide support. Same individuals, same cost of those individuals, but acknowledging their level of expertise as they provide support. That's Ms. Basura's team. New initiatives that we're putting in place, our 7th grade mathematics, really trying to make sure every student ends as a level 3 as they're going into the 8th grade. Micro-credentialing for our Algebra 1 teachers, making sure that we're looking at the specific skills that they need to grow. Civic scholars, embedded professional learning for civic teachers, that, as I have stated before, is one key area for our success. And the art of problem solving, which is the structure of our professional learning for principals over the course of this year, really engaging with them to empower them to be problem solvers every single day that they're on the experience. And when we pull them professional learning, it's enhancing their ability to solve problems. And then our culture of service, which is across the entire organization. You will see it in the school improvement plans that come to you in the upcoming months. It is incorporated into the district leaders, as I was mentioning, goals as well, and then excellence in customer service across the entire organization. So the next immediate steps for our strategic plan is to share the evaluation outcomes for this specific year, as we just did. We'll engage in a conversation both at this meeting and our next workshop. September, we will present a draft plan, and then October, we will approve the final year of this district's strategic 5-year plan. And then as soon as January hits, January through June, we will go through a 6-month process to evaluate and create the 26 through 2030 district strategic plan. So with that, that is the presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or listen to any feedback that may be provided.
Okay, board members? Mr. Rosario?
I didn't raise my hand yet.
No, I'm just looking this way because I started that way last time.
Doesn't matter.
No, you don't have anything to say?
No.
Okay. Dr. Bosca?
Well, I think I'm just going to echo the popular sentiment of congratulations. You know, clearly you guys did an excellent job, and I think the data really shows that. So I think in the last 2 years we made probably more fundamental changes than this district probably has made in the last 10 years put together. And I think that clearly those changes had a big positive effect on the quality of education, the efficiency of use of our resources and planning. And congratulations to all of you on doing such a great job.
Yeah, I also would like to congratulate you, not only you as the captain of the ship, but your entire staff and the team, down to the principals and vice principals. I know that it's planning is important and oversight is important, but execution ultimately makes it happen. And so it's all of your execution that helps make him look good and helps make us successful. So it was an extraordinary success, and so I want to congratulate everybody for that. And there were very few spots that were weaknesses. Most everything was an exceptional outperformance. So we thank you for that.
Thank you.
Dr. Jones?
Thank you very much. I think the most important statement you made is that we must change. We must have choice, and that's very, very important in today's world, especially in public education. A little bit off the cuff when we were talking about some things, been to all the schools, some twice now, and I really see an improvement in ID badges and dress code, an improvement, so I'm glad there. Question, with this being the last year of our strategic plan, and I've been on several strategic plan teams, how did you work it last time? Was a board, community, how did that work? I
So
wasn't here.
To be very honest, that is a great question. It was a hybrid approach. So we began doing the community forums, which we would do again. We did a number of those, then the pandemic hit. It was a conversations with the board and then a go back and forth in terms of creating this plan. So we created this plan from scratch. We now have 5 years of experience in this particular plan. So it, in my mind, becomes a monthly conversation to create the absolute best plan over 6 months with 5 years of experience on implementing.
Okay.
So we would be looking at the structure as a whole. So I'm not interested in saying, let's keep the 5 same focus areas, because the focus areas may ultimately change based on the success that we've had on the last 5 years focus areas. I'm not interested in saying, let's just continue to do the same thing. So I would encourage the board to kind of wipe the slate in terms of the structure of the plan. And then let's create one that ensures at the end of 5 years, the educational experience ultimately varies across the community. So every single parent's need is being met. That would be the challenge. That's kind of our driving force. And that's an easy statement to say, but it's very bold and courageous to create a plan to do that over the course of 5 years.
Did you say we'd keep the same targets or just those would shift also?
I think we start anew to keep the same targets in some ways may be disingenuous. And when I say that, we've built behaviors across the organization to sustain those. So as I lead the system, if we just keep things the same, your growth will slow down. But if you're drastically going to reset course on new priorities, you would have ultimately a new focus. And then from that focus, you identify targets each year to ensure that you hit the goal by the end of the 5 years.
Good. You spoke a little bit about math, and I was up in curriculum earlier this morning. I was talking to Ms. Hiller, and already they're starting the interventions, and it's in, it's not after school. It's just really hitting it in school with those teachers in algebra, and I just think that's a fantastic move. As a principal, that would have been really nice support for us, and I appreciate that. I don't know if this is the right time for this, but how does that, with all the things that we've had, how does that work with your contract?
So contract is my particular contract. It renews a
Right.
year out, so I am good through 27. Compensation, I receive whatever compensation administrators receive, which we have
Right.
not decided that at this particular time.
Do we have analysis with superintendents around us or same-size school districts or anything with that?
We do, and in compare, if that is the question, yes. So
Yeah.
there are
I have no idea.
28 appointed superintendents. I have the second lowest compensation of those 28 superintendents. If you were to look at tenure, I have the third highest tenure. So in terms of 28 appointed superintendents, my length of stay is third highest.
And those that are elected, do they get the percentage, like a school board saying, you're this population, you're going to get this percentage? Okay, how does that work with
So
elected?
the state approved a new compensation package for elected superintendents during the last session. So elected superintendent salaries are going to increase just as the sheriff, just as the tax collector increased to about 21 percentage point increase. So just acknowledging the unique skills of a superintendent. So elected superintendents will receive a significant increase in compensation.
21 in 1 year?
21%, yes. Average 21%.
And that doesn't matter, the size of the district?
No, their base salary does vary, but the overall compensation will be between, if you're talking dollars, between $27,000 and $31,000.
And I just, again, like to say, I know this takes a team effort, not only the district, but our schools, our community, our parents, to continue to do our best to have a good public school system, and I thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Rosario?
So thank you for that presentation. There have certainly been a lot of changes, which are for the good, of course. They benefit children, and that's our number one purpose. So I looked at your overall rating score, which you did not mention. I think in your presentation it should have been mentioned. It is in one of the backups that you provided on the very last page. If you can please send us the write-up of all the board members, the detailed, that would be good. Thank you for that. And if you can send it by email.
Yes, I already.
Also, so I appreciate the, putting that in the evaluation so we can actually see that the overall rating is 4.6, and it doesn't look like anyone missed any of the ratings that were provided. I have a question about a couple of things here. So let's talk about wage increase. What was, and remind me please, what was the wage increase for the 12-month administrators last year?
4.5%.
And we didn't work on that this year yet, right? Or was that?
Well, we've completed stage one of that, which is to make sure the students show up, and they did. So now we will have that conversation. Typically, we compensate administrators in November.
In November. Okay, because the one thing that you are entitled to, for sure, according to your contract, as you mentioned, is for every fiscal year that there has been an administrative increase, you get the same increase. I don't believe we did that last year.
The way the contract is written, I did receive it based on the successful evaluation.
Last year?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, the caveat would be the first 18 months I was here, because as you recall.
But you got a 2% increase.
The
You
year
weren't
before.
entitled to it until that second year.
Correct. Yeah, that's what I was
So
going to say.
it didn't matter.
Yeah.
But before that second year was up, the board approved a 2%
Correct.
just because.
Yes.
So that wasn't contractual, but you did receive that 2%.
No, that was the same percent that the administrators received.
Yeah, but it wasn't in your contract. You weren't supposed to get that. You got it prematurely. Instead of getting it the year post 2021, you got it before that full year.
No, in 1920, there was a 2.5% for administrators because I was not a full year, I got here in January.
Yeah.
It wasn't acceptable for me to take that. We did not take it. The following year, which was the 2021, after being here for a full year, they received 2% based on a successful evaluation. I received that 2%.
You received it in the summer of '21.
Yes,
finishing.
yes, in the summer of '21, yes.
But you were, according to your contract, you weren't supposed to receive that until, your contract says, beginning with the fiscal year,
2021.
July, yeah, but I think you got it before, it was approved before, it wasn't? Was
No.
it post, was it? So it was beginning fiscal year, July 2021, until June 2022. So you had to do that whole year and then receive it at the end. I remember this conversation. So we actually, instead of giving it to you in the summer of 2022, it was given to you the summer that it began instead of the summer that it was ending, that fiscal year ended. Oh, we're splitting hairs. Anyway,
Okay.
you got it. All right. Okay, so I just wanted to, so you got that. So last year, you did receive the 4.5%.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you, where are you on the CEO Leadership Development Program certificate?
So I've completed both of those programs. The one is basically a professional development. The second one is a year-long process that is ultimately graded, and based on that amount, the grading, you receive up to 7,500. I received the 7,500, which is.
But we didn't agree on that. The
No,
board, that didn't come to the board.
No,
The 7,500. Your contract says that you should get no less than 3,000
Mm-hmm.
up to 7,500. So you just gave yourself the higher of the two?
no, it was graded by a committee, and it was evaluated, and the committee gives that amount.
What committee?
the
The
committee
board
that-
didn't approve a committee.
It was, I'll send you the email for the second time, but ultimately.
Yeah.
It was through the state DOE. The DOE actually assesses it, you get a letter from the commissioner, and they say, congratulations, you
Yeah,
received that.
I think we're
Yeah.
talking about two different things. I'm not talking about the actual certificate, I mean the actual compensation for it. So the compensation that you're supposed to get for that is 3,000. By the way, board members, if you don't have his his contract, you can pull it up on board docs. So there was like a range
Right,
at the completion of that certificate for you to get 3,000 up to 7,500.
correct.
But we didn't approve,
The contract approved it.
It
Manny
approved
Diaz sent me a letter
a
saying. this is-
range between 3,000 and 7,500.
Which was done by that particular committee. They assessed it. Manny Diaz sent a letter saying, congratulations, the amount that you would receive is
Oh, I got you. I
$7,500.
don't recall that, so yeah, if you can send that, that would be good, thank you. Okay, I understand what you're saying now.
Okay.
Okay, and then the other thing, so that's taken care of. Contractually, you are supposed to get the deferred compensation for 5%. And are you still getting the automobile allowance?
Yes,
Okay, that's $850 for in-county business use for your personal business. Okay, I mean, for your personal automobile.
correct.
Okay. So then this year, so we're just looking at what the administrators will get this year, and you said that will come to us in November.
Correct.
Okay, so we still have a little bit of time for that. Okay. All right, thank you for answering. Oh, and elected officials. Elected superintendents. The elected superintendent increase you provided, the 24-25 didn't come out yet.
It comes out in September.
Yeah, but you're estimating then the 21%, even though it didn't come out yet?
No, I'm not estimating it. The Florida Superintendent's Association is
No,
estimating.
I mean what you provided on the
Yes.
thing,
Mhm.
but it didn't come out yet.
The formulas are all presented, so yes, when you run the formulas, that will be the increase.
Okay, so the 21% that you provided is thus far just an approximate because the actual numbers haven't come out yet.
The actual numbers have not come out yet, but the formula is there, so it's just a matter of plugging it in. But yes, you'll have that next month.
Not necessarily. I mean, it can change.
Yeah, it'll change to the,
Okay, so that doesn't come out until September. So there's still time to figure what that is. Because you do have, let me pull it up, in your contract, in addition to the base pay, you are entitled to, let me pull that up, I'm sorry. In addition to the base salary increase, or the base salary, the increase of the, whatever you get, whatever administrators get, in addition to the base salary provided, the superintendent shall receive an annual performance salary incentive from the board in the amount provided for elected superintendents. So that would be in addition to the base. And it's contract, so it's
Right.
right for us to,
No.
follow contract. So I'm totally okay with that. I just think that we should wait until we get the official elected officials,
Works for me.
publishment, whatever is published, and then also wait until administrators get their, assuming that administrators will get an increase this year.
They
That
deserve it.
hasn't come to us yet, but I think we need to wait for those to occur first before we can, I think, have a conversation about you, because I think that would need to take precedent.
Fair,
Is that fair?
fair.
Oh, and thank you for the work, by the way.
Oh,
Thank
well,
you
you're
to
welcome.
everybody who's on the cabinet, let me not forget. Thank you so much for everything, all of the work that everybody does, and obviously, instruction, curriculum and instruction. I mean, everybody plays an important role for sure, but principals and assistant principals and teachers in making this work. Oh, and I do have one other thing. There was a question about the strategic plan. So we do have a policy, and I'm going to disagree with you, Dr. Moore, slightly on policy, on the answer that you gave Dr. Jones regarding the process for the strategic plan. I did like your verbiage. You said it's a hybrid approach, and it should be a hybrid. That is correct. But then the rest was more about you presenting to the board. And that is not accurate. It is the board's strategic plan. It is the board's goal, and then you implement it. So actually, that hybrid is the perfect word for it, because together, you receive what our goals are for the district, and then, obviously, the team kind of drafts how that's going to work, and then we approve it, and so
I
on
think
and so
we're-
forth. So,
I think we're cutting hairs again, because I think that same process followed. I thought we collectively, superintendent and board, did a good job of creating that plan. And I think we'll follow a very similar process on a monthly basis to recreate what that next plan would be. And that will give me a charge for the next 5 years.
okay. Let me just remind, as you plan ahead with this, as we plan ahead with this process, the annual process for revising, developing, and/or amending the district strategic plan shall be initiated no less than 5 months prior to the beginning of the upcoming, academic. So in that planning, I hope that we'll start it as early as possible, so we're not trying to play catch-up with that
Absolutely.
timing.
We got 8 months, we're good.
Perfect.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Thank you.
Okay, first of all, I'm going to start with thanking your team, not just thanking the teachers, the students who work hard, but also your purple team. Can you go to the next slide? There you go, your purple team. So the purple team goes out to all the
Look at how
schools,
big I am.
and I've got to tell you, when I come by this office and walk through, I see a lot of empty chairs. And you say, where is everybody? It's a ghost, especially your department. That's because they're out in the schools, and they're out doing the job. They're out doing the hard work. And when I walked, and I did walk every campus as well in the last 2 weeks, and I heard over and over and over again compliments of the purple team members that helped them get the grades that they got. And so they're recognizing the work from the purple team. So I'd just like to say thank you to the purple team. Sometimes you're not thanked enough.
I look like Grimace in that picture.
Anyway, so one of those school districts that you don't include when you compare us, and I wonder why, is Citrus County. We're about the same size.
Same size, but way further north. I
Well, Miami's a lot farther south and not the same size, and
Well, that was
Charlotte
a-
is a lot further west.
But same demographic, same design. I include Miami. Keep in mind, I can't change what I did 5 years ago, but that was a slide that says, this is what can be done, so don't be satisfied with the excuses. And this place was filled with excuses 5 years ago as to why we couldn't change. So it was ultimately telling the story that we need to be uncomfortable with where we currently are, and you can't have change until people are uncomfortable with their current reality.
I get that. The reason why I bring up Citrus County is because they're used a lot in comparing us in other ways. For one thing, the presentation I'm going to show you is Safe Schools for Alex. They compare us to Citrus County and a lot of that, the safety stuff. So that's the only reason why I brought it up. Strategic plan, yes. Last time I agree, it was a hybrid. Yes, it's the districts. It's a combination between the board and the superintendent. The board makes that as an overall arching thing that we're going to be looking at for budgeting, but also you carry out the day-to-day, so you've got to go through all those strategic plan goals and make them happen. So it is a hybrid. I think, remember last time, one thing you didn't include in that conversation was you did do town halls. You did have back and forth with the board. We did offer lots of suggestions, and you did incorporate those into the plan. That's tough when you got 5 different people suggesting things. But you also put surveys out to parents. And so what you did in those town halls, because I did attend several of them, where you opened it up to ideas for the community. And parents were able to, and community members were able to say, hey, have you thought about this? Or, you know, I'd like to envision this for our schools. And that was something that I saw later come back in the surveys to everyone. So in other words, not one person speaking at a town hall is going to make that change, but instead that suggestion was put into a survey, and that survey was put out to everybody to gather information to see what the whole wanted. So I really liked the way that was done. You were able to get lots of individualized ideas, but then also put it into a survey to see, okay, we could look at the surveys and say, you know, only one person wants that, but yet, you know, overwhelmingly people are saying they want this. You know, so that's one thing, and that was one of the things I saw, I believe, last time we talked about K-8, and that was something that came up and we're starting to do. So congratulations to the Purple team, and that's why I wanted to bring that up about the surveys. Don't forget to include those too.
Thank you.
Yes.
Dr. Moore, would you be able to send to all board members, I think it was the formula from the Superintendent's Association?
Yes.
Average, yeah, I'd like to look at that. Thank you.
All right. All right. Dr. Shafty.
Through the chair, this item is review of the professional learning catalog. So in accordance with Florida Statutes 1012.98 School Community Professional Learning Catalog, we bring this annually before the board for the review. All changes are tracked using track changes for your ease of reviewing of the updates. And the document was provided to each of you via email due to the length of the document, as well as being made available through individual board member briefings. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Mr. McDonald, no? Dr. Jones?
Just a comment, and I know we went over this with you, Dr. Shafty, and Dr. Moore, for the AP pool. How many do we have in there now, and what is the process of getting into the pool?
I will defer to Ms. Crisafulli.
Okay, sorry, Ms. Christopoli.
Through the chair. So we currently have 6 candidates in the pool after hiring some new APs. We're going to build that this school year with a new principal AP leadership academy. So we're about to put that out and welcome and invite anyone that is currently a teacher, any teacher that's currently in a master's program, as opposed to being finished, because we want to be able to give the opportunity to have more professional learning to get them ready to be in any of our schools.
Thank you. As one who did that system, the AP pool was great, getting out to schools, working with principals. And I like the fact, Ms. Crisafulli, that they don't have to be finished. They're working on it, so they can tie everything in. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Dr. Pasca? Mr. Rosario?
No comments.
I'm good too. Thank you.
Mr. Green.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Through the chair. Item D, as we have discussed before this year, we're putting out a lot of invitation to bid from various service providers for a couple reasons. One, to make sure we're getting the best price, But two, as well in this case, to help provide some service to our schools when they're going out to select transportation, not having to vet through whether the vendor has sexual molestation and the right certificate of insurance and the right policy. So by doing this, we've had a committee of people go through some charter bus lines. We put out an invitation to bid. They came back, and we have BTM coaches, Escot, Exotic, Jet Set, and Motor Coach, all the most responsive bidders. They will be vetted through insurance, they'll be vetted through pricing. That way, and that's on the agenda for your approval tonight. That way, when schools need a charter bus to take a vacation, we've removed some of the barriers from them.
Take a vacation.
A field trip. They won't have to go through those, and we'll have transportation in place to help support our school buses doing what they need to do, transporting students to activities and school. And we can focus on athletics and school. Field trips, they will have buses available that have been vetted. They have the proper insurances, and they're on a bid. This is for a 3-year contract with 2 one-year annual renewals upon acceptance from those vendors and the board.
Anyone on that? Yes, Dr. Jones.
Mr. Green, how many total now that you're looking through to vet and so forth?
So we vetted, I think, 8 total,
Okay.
and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 that made it through all of the committee and had all of the required insurances, and those 5 will all be recommended tonight so that the schools can choose from them.
When I was here in 17, 18, we had 2.
Yeah.
And boy, at the end of the year with field trips or activities, athletics, it was tough. So I'm glad we have more options.
And it doesn't mean we couldn't directly negotiate if we got into a bind and we needed another vendor that we couldn't directly negotiate, but this will give them a wide variety of pre-vetted that have all the proper insurances and qualifications so they can just enter the rec and get their travel.
Anyone else? I just want to comment that, boy, is this helpful. This is a good example of the purple team helping the schools. And the reason why is because
I'm on both.
I remember years ago when I had to try to get magic carpet ride buses for my school. I had to actually go out and call all the different companies and then secure the cost and then submit it to the board. So it took a lot longer, and each individual school was doing that. So this is a good example of fixing the practice of making things better for schools so they don't have to do that type of work. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Should that exhaust superintendent's portion of the agenda? Next time, resume it.
Okay. Could you put that website up? Is that possible? The Safe Schools for Alex website? It's located on that agenda item. So I attended the Florida School Board Association Eastern Regional meeting on August 8th in Orlando, and the topics were safety. And so I really wanted to go to that meeting, and I learned more things about safety than I had heard in the past, but also some things I had heard in the past that had been improved. And so one of the speakers at this event was the gentleman that's on the front page of that website, if you can get it up there. Okay,
The link is in the agenda.
yeah, that's what I told him. And Mr. Schechter, I believe. His son Alex died at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. Several of the parents who lost their children during that event have started nonprofits, and most of them for really good reasons, you know, to help in their child's name help somebody else. And this is a really great one that's really taken off. And if you can see from the bottom, it's gotten a lot of endorsements across the board from lots of different people on both sides of the aisle. So there's a picture of, if you could go down, I guess you can't put the picture up? No. That right there is a picture of him and his son. But his son was also in band. So that explains some of the tabs that are on this site. This site is open to any parent, any community member, anybody at all. It's an open site. It's not just for schools to look at safety, it's for everybody to look at safety. And it takes data from the assessor data that we give to the state about all the discipline that we have in our schools. It takes data from the Department of Health, from the juvenile justice system, from the Department of Education, and from surveys that are across the board. It's updated annually, although the new information from 2023, 2024 school year has not been updated yet. They said any day now, so that should happen soon. Along with this, you can go on there and get to something that they partnered with the University of Florida for, and this is a micro-credentialing that they offer for people to dive farther into safety. And so it's new, brand new, it just opened up, and it's through UF. But one of the things I want to point to is the dashboard itself. So could you go to the top where it says School Safety Dashboard and go down at the very top? Very top. Yep, there you go. And pull down the Florida one. It's new. Okay, so in this dashboard, you can click on any county that you want. So if you even click on Indian River, you can just go to Indian River really quickly, or you can type in Indian River. And on there, they've taken all the data from all those things that I mentioned, and they've put them in one spot. So you're not having to go grab all this data from lots of different places. You can use it. A lot of nonprofits can use this. They need this data for when they're writing grants. We need it as a school district for when we're writing grants. A lot of times we have to make calls to all these different departments to get this data. They put it all together, which is really nice. One of the things that you can kind of go around and play with it. One thing they say to look at is the data playground. So if you look at the top, there you go. At the data playground, it goes through and gives you all the different things that you can look at for your concerns about our schools. And like the very first one is buses, and that's going to be leading into my next discussion. But if you notice and pull down, it compares districts. So how we're doing compared to other districts in our transportation ratios, on our crashes, things like that. Now, crashes, don't get too concerned about that. That means anytime that there's any incident with a bus involving some sort of minor crash that's considered a crash, they put it here. If you can see, and you pull down to Indian River on there, if you can do that. Can you do that, Sam? I can on mine, but you might be able to on yours. Oh, yeah, you got to pull to the right on the bottom. You see the bar on the bottom? It'll pull to the right, and then you can pull down. And then you got to pull back to see Indian River. It's kind of tough on this. Different computers, you don't have to do that. So once you pull down and you can find Indian River, there you go. You can also compare us up there in the enrollment to like counties, and that's why I said Citrus, because it compares us a lot to Citrus in here. Citrus is similar in our numbers. Anyway, this here shows you lots of different statistics, and it's talking about safety in general. So this would be a great thing to put out for SAC teams to look at, for parents to look at, for community members to look at. More eyes on safety, the better. And this is a community that's very, very concerned about keeping our kids safe. So the more people that can have eyes on all this stuff, the better. And I haven't been able to dig down deep into all of the data, but it's quite interesting to look at this dashboard. So I'm going to show you the dashboard. The other thing is, if you look at the top where it says, let the music play on, because his son was a musician, they have a program where they teach private lessons for free online. So a child that doesn't have access to maybe a saxophone teacher or something can go on there and get saxophone lessons and things like that. So those are grants and different programs that they offer that are out there. Okay, so I just wanted to point everybody in the direction of something that I found that I thought was really cool. Any comments about that?
Ms. Bernberg, thank you for sharing. Have they determined where people look the most, or like when you're in a district or your parent, county school board, what areas people are looking for when they, what's their big one for safety here?
Well, on this site, you mean?
Yeah.
The Florida one is new.
Okay, all right.
So it just came out.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, when I was there, they were
Okay.
just kind of putting it together. So they haven't been able to really dive into that.
It's good data.
It just kind of combines all the data in one place, which is good, especially when you're looking at grants and things for getting money together for safety issues. All right, so the second item I have on here is high-tech solutions for transforming student safety in Florida. There is a flyer that you have. This is one company. There are several companies that do this, but this is the one that presented to us. I have heard from them before. They were at Florida School Board Association in Tampa. But they gave us some really interesting statistics. I myself have witnessed, when I was behind a bus last year, I witnessed somebody going around one of our stop buses and was near Oslo, and the kids were getting on the bus when the person passed, and total illegal pass. Of course, I'm looking around for a police officer. There's nobody there to see it, so it didn't happen, right? Second one I saw was somebody that passed on the right side and almost hit a child. In St. Lucie County last year, that happened and they lost a child. The person went on the right side and killed a child. So these number of passes that are happening about our school buses, and if you talk to our bus drivers, they'll tell you it happens a lot. They estimate 11,000 illegal passes last year in Florida that were witnessed by school bus drivers. They estimate 2 million violations annually in our state. There are 45 million annually in the United States. So this is a big problem. If you notice how busy everybody is and they feel like they have to get somewhere very, very quickly in this town, it shouldn't be because of our children being punished by their lateness. So in the past, we had laws that the deputy had to witness it. So if, like I said, it didn't happen if a deputy didn't see it. But thank goodness this last year I was following a statute, and it is Florida Statute 316.173. And that statute was put into place last year and became law. And it's called the State Uniform Traffic Control. And it gives the school districts allowed to be able to put school bus infraction detection systems on our school buses. So what does that mean? Cameras on the outside of the school bus. I saw the presentation that this gentleman gave us, and it was eye-opening to watch how many passes there are. If you go to their website and see their videos of people over and over and over again passing school buses. But what it does is it takes 2 pictures and a video. So it videotapes the person going around the bus. It takes a picture of the front of the car so you see the driver, and it takes a picture of the back of the car so you can see the license plate. And it works through the sheriff's department to send a fine directly to the licensed driver, or the person that owns the car, I believe. And then I have to find the licensed driver. They get a $225 fine, no points. That fine then works to pay for the sheriff's department hours that they use, and then it goes back to pay for all the equipment. The school board, according to this company, and there are lots of companies out there, there's another one called Angel Tracks, they upfront all the equipment costs, so there's no equipment cost to us. They get paid back when all of these fines come through. Then when all the equipment is paid for, then the extra money that comes back from any fines after that goes to the district to be able to put into bus driver incentives. So it actually can go back to our bus drivers. Now, they said, I asked about that, they said it takes about a year for that to happen. Miami-Dade has now adopted this, Hillsborough has adopted it, Broward County has adopted it, and other districts are getting on board. So I think we should look at this. This isn't something that we could talk further about that in safety meetings, but this isn't something that the community can't know about. This is something that we should be telling the community we're going to do. As a matter of fact, the law says you have to let the community know you're doing this before you do it. So there are lots of things in the statute that says what we have to do in order for that to happen, but I would like to look at putting this system on our buses, especially since there's could be no cost to us. Anybody?
Sure.
Dr. Posca?
Yeah, I'm very interested in pursuing this technology. I think we obviously should do some financial research on the best process and way to go about it. Clearly, you probably don't need a system on every camera. You're going to get the effect downstream if you get a certain percentage of the fleet with the camera. People are going to really feel the effects, and whether the camera is there on that specific bus, people are going to take pause. And I would say that, well, it's attractive that they would front the costs up front. I think they're doing that because it's profitable. And, you know, the first step of business is cutting out the middleman. Let's investigate if we can do it without them and buy the equipment. And we'll probably be better off, especially if we do this at a scaled, intelligent way where we're not trying to throw it on every piece of equipment we have, every bus. I think that, in general, though, I definitely support improving the safety of our students by adding cameras to buses.
Okay. Dr. Jones?
Do we have the data on, you know, we'll get that information once in a while, motorists who illegally pass school buses? Do we have anything like that from Ms. Idolette? I can't remember.
It would be Ms. Idolette who would have that. It would be the sheriff, but I've had the
Okay.
opportunity to meet with the sheriff. We are looking at this program and similar programs. We're actually meeting next week, so it
Right.
is something we want to pursue to make sure that we doing it, A, most cost effectively, and B, reducing, if not completely eliminating, bad decisions drivers are making. And the reality is, our roads are very congested, and come November, they're going to be even more
Worse.
congested.
Thank you, Ms. Barrenborg, for bringing this to our attention. I think it's something we need to keep on top of. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, I did speak with this company several months ago, and conceptually, it sounded like a good idea. I spoke with a personal friend who related a story, and this is somebody who's been living up north, where they're not familiar with and not exposed in New York City with having buses around, you know, who passed a bus and going the opposite direction, didn't even realize it till it had happened. We have a lot of people from up north, so it's very easy for people to make that mistake, but it's also very dangerous. So I think it's good to look into, and with the advent of not just our county, but other counties adopting this, it'll be something they'll become more, not only more aware of, but more sensitive to, and hopefully bring down the number, not just raise any revenue, but bring down the number of accidents and the number of incidences of people passing when they shouldn't be.
Which is the goal.
Yes.
Not to make money, but to keep kids safe. Ms. Rosario?
Dr. Moore, I'm certainly interested in keeping kids safe on our buses. I know that we've been talking about this for a while. But Dr. Moore, when you said that you're planning on meeting with the sheriff and that you've already been in talks about this kind of thing, if not this particular one, others that you're talking with the sheriff about. What exactly are those talks? Are they, you know, how do we partner with this? How do we pay for it? Who keeps the footage? Like, what are those, what is your intention in these conversations with the sheriff on this topic?
To collect all the needed information. At the end of the day, there are buses that he's contracting the materials with. So it's almost a contract with the sheriff as well as the district. So it is meeting with the organizations to determine who funds what, or what access do we have to provide. The information would go through the sheriff's office, not necessarily our office, because that's the intent. So it's getting all of the answers to all the questions you just proposed.
So you said that he is funding some cameras on some of our buses. Is that what I just heard?
It depends on the organization that you work with. As the one that Ms. Barrenborg is highlighting, they provide everything up front. It's installed. And as they issue the tickets, or the sheriff office issues the tickets with the devices or the equipment that they have provided, ultimately, that's how they are funding, A, the equipment, and B, let's be honest, the profit that they're going to make. And then after that, we get a remaining portion that pays for the services of the sheriff's office, because they're the one issuing the tickets, and there's a percent that comes back to the district for bus driver maintenance incentives and things of that nature.
So are you thinking that we would partner as we did with the magnometers?
It would,
You know, in terms of partial payment them and partial payment us? Or,
well, that would be, yes, I would want his costs to be covered, but at the end of the day, my intentions would be twofold. A, create the understanding across the entire community, if you make a decision to speed past a bus, you're going to get caught and there'll be a fine associated with that to keep children safe. And then the second part would be additional, a revenue source that we could offset other costs with.
so I'm just thinking of the video footage, right? Because if tickets are going to be issued, it probably would make sense that it all goes to the sheriff's platform or you know, whatever he uses to get those videos, obviously, or his, you know, the office to get those videos, so that they can follow up appropriately and capture, you know, car tags or whatever they
Right.
need to do for that. And as I'm talking, I'm kind of thinking about some questions out loud. What about in your conversations, and since we haven't gotten there yet and we're still just in the process of vetting, if not this company, other companies, as you mentioned, what about piloting, as Dr. Posca mentioned, you know, maybe rolling it out? I don't remember how Dr. Posca put it, but it had something to do with, and forgive me, Dr. Posca, if I'm going to say it wrong, but I'm thinking more like piloting in high-traffic areas before we actually enroll it in all of our buses, just to see if that's the company that we're going to use or not.
And I think the point Dr. Posca is making is spot on, because at the end of the day, we collect all of the information, the structure. Maybe we don't want anyone to, maybe he could fund the equipment, or I can fund the equipment, and my
Right.
return on investment gross, I can obtain that return on investment at a quicker time versus waiting 2 years. So very, very early on in the process, but I think over the next several months, we'll be able to bring something back to the board that says this is the most efficient way for us to do this, the most profitable way for us to do this, and more importantly, the quickest way to get the intervention to the community.
Well, this seems to be more of just a, hey, why don't you go investigate? I mean, it looks like if you're going to bring something to us that's going to be for a vote, I think that you should be officially charged with that work. So maybe, since it is Ms. Berenborg's item, maybe she can bring tonight, add something that will just kind of say, go and do, and let us vote on that. You know, go and create, vet these companies, and come back to us with an official, this is what, with an official recommendation,
Well, I think.
which seems appropriate. I mean,
Yeah, I
make
think
it,
following our process, that if he's hearing board consensus on this, which I'm hearing, then that means that he needs to go investigate it and then bring it back to us, and then we vote. 2 points that were brought up, one with the pilot program. There is another district that's doing a pilot program with one of these companies. And they had reasons for that and reasons against it. So, you know, once you do your homework, you'll find out those. The other one was about the cost of doing it yourself versus the cost of having a company do it. There was another district that did that. The manpower behind looking at the cameras and everything is what we're paying for whether you use a company. They do that versus the sheriff's department having to hire people to do it.
Wait, say
What
that
they
again?
do is they do the manpower of getting the photos, the videos, and lining it up and agreeing that, yes, that possibly is a pass, and sending it to the sheriff's department. So there is that opportunity to look at it. I'm not saying we should debate that now because we don't have all the information. Let the companies present that to you and get the information. But I'm just putting out there that I would like for this to look at us bringing this to the board for a vote.
Got it.
Okay. All right, I believe, Dr. Jones, you're next.
Yes, ma'am. I have on the agenda a proclamation that we will be reading at the September 23rd meeting. I would like to make sure the board understands why we're doing this. Obviously, we'd have resolutions and proclamations proffered by a board member, and this one means very much to me. I also left on your desk this morning, I was trying to find a summary of Ron Hudson, very, very hard to do, but I think this article in August, after the scholarship benefit we had for him at GYAC, does a really, really great summary. And if you haven't been in the district in a while, you can take a look at that or research him. He truly is a living legend in this community, and the one thing that I was a little upset with, the county commission got to it before we did, and they recognized this June 29th, as we say in our proclamation, for Dr. Ron Hudson Day. And I did check with County Commissioner Susan Adams, and she said we could use this as a template. I talked with Dr. Moore and brought together a few people who really, really know him, and Jennifer Idolette, Dr. Long, Peggy Poisel, Eric Seymour, and myself, and we talked a little bit about this. This proclamation summarizes just a little bit about what he's done for this community. His life is unbelievable, and I just want you to see what will be on the agenda in September. And if you have not been in the school district or community for a long time, you can look at this. It's hard to describe as far as what he has done. He was our first black principal in our school district, then he was the first black principal at Vero Beach High School. I know Mr. Seymour and I were recipients of his leadership, helping us move on as far as administrators. And he was also brought from Vero Beach High School after 2 years to assistant superintendent of curriculum instruction here in the district. And I think one thing as far as community, and even at that night at GYAC, I didn't realize everything he had done, but he and Dan Richardson were the ones who really moved forward for GYAC in the late 90s and has done a great job with continuing to support our students before and after school. So I just wanted to share that with you as far as the proclamation. But I do encourage you to continue to read about him because truly a living legend. And then the next thing I wanted to put before the board, we talked about what we could do other than a proclamation. As you know, I think Mr. McDonald was not here. I think Dr. Posca was with the Billy Wilson Gym. And in our policy, 7500, I understand that we now need a supermajority. And I highlighted on that attachment, it said, notwithstanding the exceptional circumstances, the board reserves the right for a supermajority vote to name a school after an individual has been deceased for a minimum of 3 years. And for exceptional circumstances, the board reserves the right, sorry, I gotta move mine down here. To do that, I'm sorry, I don't have that, can't move that down, for someone who is living. And I can't think of any other person who really would deserve this right now who is living. So I wanted to put that before you because, again, you need to study that, talk about it if you wish, ask questions. But after that meeting at GYAC, I see his niece in the audience right now. I think he's 93. I think he's 93. And he is the most humble man. And I said, is it all right if I present this to the board? He said yes, but he's very, very humble, just like he was at GYAC. And so I just wanted to present that to you. I know there's some questions. We talked about this on the committee. Should it be a little plaque at Vero Beach High School because he was the first black principal there? That's what they thought. They thought that would be appropriate as far as the administrative suite, but that's something obviously we could talk about at the board. But I just did want to share with you that we are going to be reading that proclamation and probably in September a vote on the administrative suite naming. So I don't know if I can answer all the questions about Dr. Hudson, but Mr. Seymour, do you want to step in a little bit? Because it's just me talking right now.
Yes, through the chair. Yeah, I've been knowing of and about Dr. Hudson, Dr. A. Ronald Hudson, for some time. And once I got out of college and started at Vero Beach High School, I heard about him. Hadn't, realized who and what legacy he had already established. So I too concur that it's a worthwhile journey to live and keep the legacy of Dr. A. Ronald Hudson in our communities and even about our state.
I have to add one personal note. I was dean of Vero Beach High School when Dr. Hudson was principal there. I learned so much from him, but I remember one time we were talking about the SAT and the ACT. And he graduated from high school, I think around 52, went to Korea, and then came back, but when taking the SAT, I said, oh, you took it here at Vero Beach High School, and he looks at me like, oh, no, ma'am, I was not allowed to take it here at Vero Beach High School. So those are the kind of things, especially, there's a lot more out there about this young man, but Vero News does a really good, Nick Samuels, a good reporter there, did a really, really good summary of what he's done for the community as a young man, how he's helped every day of his life somehow students. So thank you for letting me share.
Okay, board members?
Yeah.
Aye.
So yeah, I saw on the agenda you added this, and I did some research into his remarkable career, and you know, I look forward to honoring his really immense contributions to the community. I think it's a good endeavor to try to lay some history to honor him and help to remember where we've come from and where we're going. So I fully support both measures.
Thank you, Dr. Pasca. And you'll be able to meet him in September. He's just so cool.
Mr. McDonald?
I concur. Very impressive background, and Vero Beach in Indian River County is relatively young in terms of a history basis. Where I came from in New York City, history was 400 or 500 years old, but here we have pretty much a living history that represents most of our community. And also represents our African American community. It's always encouraging to see them thriving and doing well, and I think it's very apropos and commendable that we recognize and honor and not only him but the efforts of he and others like him who really built this community over the last 50 years.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald.
Ms. Rosario?
Yeah, in terms of the proclamation, I think it's wonderful. I know that he, I don't know if you actually articulated it, but he is the founder, one of the founders of GYAC. And it is what it is today, in part because of his vision and leadership. So on that merit alone, it certainly deserves a proclamation. He certainly deserves a proclamation. But I want to pivot a little bit from that to the commemoration or the policy that you mentioned. There is no 7,500 policy in the school board, in the school district. It's not 7,500, it's 7,250. And you didn't include all of the entirety of the policy. You only included a very short piece of it, small piece of it. So I'm going to pass this out so you all can see. There is a process that needs to occur. Even though you have highlighted that we can, with exceptional circumstances, vote, and I'll give this to Dr. Moore as well, just so he has. The full policy is 7250. It's called Commemoration of School Facilities. And certainly what you provided, that small little section that you provided in board docs is in here. But if you turn to the very last section of the policy, the process for renaming or commemorating a space or an existing or a new facility has to begin with a community forum. The community forum must take place prior to a workshop, a work group being established. The board will consider requests to name or rename existing or new schools and facilities within a school, such as a stadium, these are just examples, media center, playground, theater, gymnasium. Certainly an administrative office would be considered one of those. And then such requests must be reviewed by the work group in the same manner as outlined above with the work group, including but not limited to the principal of the school, district employees, community members, parents, students, representatives of the school advisory committee, PTA, student government, and student council. The work group will recommend a name to the principal. In this case, it could be recommended that the recommendation would be Dr. Ronald
Hudson.
Hudson. And then it's up to the work group to convene and discuss that. The work group will recommend the name to the principal. After a majority vote of the work group team was conducted, the principal will then forward that recommendation to the superintendent. Within 45 days of that decision, the superintendent will forward that recommendation to the board. The name of a new existing school or facility shall pass with a supermajority vote of the board. So if we follow that process, which we have in policy, I think it is appropriate to do.
So I agree, we have a policy, and we should follow a policy, although this board has chosen before not to follow a policy and overrode it with a vote. I'm fine either way. I think in this matter, the gentleman being 93 years old, kicking the can down the road, I'm okay with following the policy. I just know that this gentleman's 93 years old. And so it's an urgent request, I believe, on your behalf
Yes.
because of his age. So that's just something to consider.
Dr. Moore, your thoughts? I mean, when I looked at this and I vetted it,
So my initial thoughts, and I think that's why you said no.
yeah, before I see a
November, that-
proclamation or resolution, I want to see what it is.
So in my mind, I would not recommend not following policy, and if you said within November, there's an amount of time to adhere to the policy, which was what I thought prior to this item being presented. So I don't see any issues with me presenting an item before this board that it aligns to policy.
I mean, and there's no, I'm sorry, may I, there's no indication here either in the policy of how long the work group has to meet. So it could foreseeably be a very short.
Okay, so,
Session.
I'm
So
sorry.
could she bring an item then tonight for us to vote on to say, go ahead with the work group?
It's not
Or
on-
do we
it
need
has to
that
be-
as do we need that as a vote, or are you just hearing the board?
So not my item, but as it was presented to me prior to being posted, never was my intent not to follow or make a recommendation not to follow policy.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, do you just need, kind of you hearing what the board is saying right now, that go ahead and follow
Yeah,
it?
no,
Or do you need us
I-
to actually say that in a vote?
No, you don't need to say that
Okay.
in a vote. I think the work will be on its way, and give every assurance to every board member that it will align to policy.
Okay, so the committee I started, could that be the work group?
That-
So we don't have to take this?
Was-
Regroup?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a
What?
continuation. Yes.
What was that? I'm
I
sorry.
started a committee just to talk about this, bring people together after Dr. Hudson's recognition at GYAC, after county commissioners said June 29th is his day. So I just started talking about it.
So I think we
That's
look
not
at
the
the policy, PTA, the principal, convene that group. This doesn't have to be a long, arduous process. Community forums, that's easy to do.
Parents,
This isn't.
the PTA, you need the
Yeah.
PTA, SAC,
Meet with them
all
yeah.
those student
Can
government,
Dr.
student
Moore,
council.
are you done speaking? I know you're
I can-
getting interrupted, so
We- no,
are you
I'm
done?
fine.
Okay.
We can get it done.
Okay.
So, question on the work group. We were thinking about Vero Beach High School. I think that's the most impact that he had when he became the first African-American principal in there in 85, 86. So work with parents from there, PTA from there. Okay, I can do that real quickly. Okay, I'll do that.
Well, I think that it. It's doable. Yeah, it's the superintendent, not you,
I got it.
not you, Dr. Jones, that convenes or ensures that the group is convened.
I'll work
I
with
mean,
the
the work
superintendent.
group.
I'll work with the superintendent, yes. Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Okay. So you did both of your items, so we're moving on to artificial intelligence.
Oh, let me get my stuff. Okay, so let me pull this back up. Artificial intelligence. So I created the policy that you see before you. After talking with the superintendent for a while, actually, on creating something of the sort, the other policies that he actually found two and I found one, those are the full backups in board docs. Sorry, let me just go back there so I can pull it back up. All right, my computer's a little slow today. So as I pull that back up, the backup that you have there are 3 districts that I believe the backup should be there. Sorry, here it is. Okay, actually 2, Volusia and Washington County. So Dr. Moore provided me with Washington County, and then I found Volusia's policy. Not very many districts have policies on artificial intelligence. It just seems appropriate. I know that we as a board talked about this some time ago on different occasions. We do not have a policy on artificial intelligence. There is a lot of concern over the misuse of it. And so I just thought it would be appropriate to bring to the board a drafted outline of the kind of like the best of both of those policies together for us, and some of best practices that were taken from other places in terms of what that would look like. Okay, so as you see, it is pretty straightforward. It doesn't seem to be any controversy about this. The biggest thing here is identifying what is allowed and what isn't allowed. And essentially, in a very, very, surmised way, there is no ban on using it, except to say anything that will replace free thinking. Any artificial intelligence that will prevent a student from providing pure thought work, that would be prohibited. Other than that, you can kind of read through and provide your suggestions. This was just a draft that I obviously put together. I thought it was pretty thorough. I'm going to hand it back over to Dr. Moore. Lastly, the very last section talks about academic integrity, that the standard is that students are prohibited from using AI to generate content for their assignments in a manner that compromises originality and authenticity. That's really the basis of a lot of AI policies. It's not to replace the students' ability to be creative thinkers and think outside the box, obviously, and learn without using these platforms. You can't write your essays with artificial intelligence platforms. You have to write it yourself. That's the kind of thing. A lot of places are prohibiting things like Grammarly, students from using Grammarly because they're not actually learning grammar the correct way if they just default to Grammarly as the, check my grammar errors and mistakes. Those are the kinds of things that are happening nowadays, and it prevents students from learning the actual content. And so that's really where this comes from. So Dr. Moore, would you like to add?
Just a little bit. I think, I don't know if Ms. Rosario mentioned it, but I think early summer, we started having conversations around the creation of a policy. I did have staff do some research. We found, I think, 2 counties that had policies already in place. I think Mr. Rosario referenced that. She found an additional one. So she's proffering a policy, I guess she put together from her research. In addition to the policy that's before you, I think it's important to note that we have, Neola is recommending AI policy as well. We are in the process of reviewing policies as a whole. We have about 85 policies, fun times, coming before the board. We have legal review next Friday, I believe, and then following legal review, which is the opportunity for cabinet members who will present those policies to you to sit with the attorneys and make sure what we're presenting is absolutely legally sufficient, while at the same time allows cabinet to make sure it is appropriate for the school district of Indian River County. So this policy kind of is in the front of that process. So the advantage we have here today is the opportunity to hear from board prior to legal review. So we will go through the legal review process, as I said, next week. We will look at the policies that Neola is suggesting, but it'd be very beneficial to hear your feedback regarding this particular policy that's before you now.
And may I just add to that, please? The, just before the board kind of gives their feedback on it, I will just add, we do have AI written in our code of conduct as prohibited from students. So that, you know, if we create an AI policy, it kind of aligns. It's a good thing to have the policy that is prohibiting this in our code of conduct, which we don't currently have. We also don't currently have state legislature or something, you know, we don't have a law that says you can't use it. So the good thing is, no matter what Neola recommends, it's not going to be based on law. They're creating something that is based on their, I guess, their experience, or what, maybe something that might look like something that I did. I don't know. They might, so that's the good thing. So whatever we create, you know, or if it's a kind of like a mishmash of what Neola recommends and what is before you today, I just think that it's important for you to know neither of those two, there is no law, you know, so they're not working hand in hand with presenting something that is based on changes in legislation.
And just to add on that, the code of conduct is in fact a policy that's approved annually. So it does have the same merit of a policy. So we would have to align, if the board makes changes to the policy that adopts, that contradict the code of conduct, we'd have to align the two. It's just a process.
And I was sure not to do, I tried, I was sure not to do that.
Yeah,
I think there's only like one or two lines in the code of conduct with AI.
Okay, board members? Mr. McDonald?
Sure.
Oh, Dr. Bosco, go ahead.
So I'll just start by asking, you didn't use an AI bot to write this policy?
No.
Just want to make sure.
No, sir. So if you find any grammar errors, let me know.
Very good. No, it looks good at first glance. I think it has, I think it's a good policy. And my question may not belong in this specific policy, but I would like to see something that communicates the expectation to teachers that really any written assignment is run through some sort of software to pick up the AI. I know we have it. I know they know how to use it. I just want to ensure that they are using it really consistently because kids have full access to this. It's very easy for them to do. They can, in 5 minutes, do it on their phone, scratch it down on a piece of paper, and hand it in. So I think we have to make sure that we reinforce with our teachers the necessity to use this technology.
Okay. Mr. McDonald?
Yeah, I agree. It's something we need to look into. It's good to be a little bit ahead of the curve, although it's already out there and available to be used. But I think that it's important for us to have policies, both for the staff and teachers, but also for the students, to ensure that it's one, not abused, but two, doesn't undermine the general learning process that they need to go through. So I think it's an excellent idea to take this and look forward.
Just in general, we need an AI policy, whether this is the right one or not. Just continue to research it, take a look at it. and then get it where we need to get it. It's very important what Dr. Posca just said. I mean, before this, Turnitin was something all English teachers used, as far as, but most English teachers can tell whether the student wrote it, most of them. But it still takes a lot of time, but, it's at their fingertips. In our filters, kind of along the same line, like for students, when they get on the computer, we're still blocking what we need to block?
Yeah,
Okay.
through the chair.
Okay.
There are 2 other policies that are out there. Swanee has one, and so does Baker. So I think we should look at those as well. I do know, even though it's not in law yet, that legislators were speaking about this last year. It was brought up. And I think that we need to look at including it in our legislative platform. The other thing is, I'm going to suggest it for FSBA's platform, that, it's not just us, obviously, it's a lot of school districts across the country that are dealing with this, and I think everybody needs to make that on the forefront. So yes, it needs to go there. I just question, I know when we use Neola, we pay for that service, and when they create a policy, they stand behind it with their attorneys, correct?
Through the chair, and Molly, that is correct, that they provide a guarantee on their policies?
It is correct that they do defend their policies as written. So that what they would not defend is if there's changes to the policy made by a specific district that they did not write, or if it is as applied, but as written, yes, they do.
Yeah, and I have a concern when we have board members writing policy, and then Neola suggests something different, and we decide not to use Neola's. We have now gotten ourselves away from being defended by Neola, correct?
No.
That is correct. So we put ourselves in a litigation issue, and I have a concern about that. I think it's great that we kind of give those ideas to Neola and see what Neola comes back with, and possibly use their policy just to keep ourselves protected.
Through the chair, I think we need, and I think the process that we have created allows us to look at it very specifically, each policy. As I said, we have 85 policies coming together, and the overlap of policies is massive, 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 massive. And we created an additional work on staff when we modify or change policies. So I'll say that. But at the same time, the board owns policy. So taking the time to review to make sure that it's applicable to the individual county is extremely important. And I would say most times the answer is yes, that it does, but, and I know you're not saying we blanketly take what Neola says.
No, but I want to
But-
see the Neola policy and say,
and-
is that acceptable? Could we use it?
Yes, absolutely, and I think some of that work is you charge staff to bring you a recommendation that is, Neola has a guarantee if you take it the way that it's absolutely written, they will defend it.
But I also know that they do listen too, because I have
absolutely.
made those calls to Neola and said, this policy you have on XYZ, I have a concern with it because it doesn't do this. And they really do make changes and take that into consideration.
I would agree with
But
that.
what I like about it is we're protected when we use the Neola policy, whereas if we go out on our own and use our own policy, then we're subject to litigation.
Correct, I just want to make sure you all understand, we take the extra step of ensuring what comes before you is in fact legally sufficient with our own law term to make sure whether it's changed or not changed, we still should be good.
Yeah.
Does
it's
it
just
require more
We're
work?
using extra,
Absolutely.
more work
Yes,
and more
it does.
hours on
Right.
our side.
Well, drastic
Okay.
changes, yes.
Got it.
So, may I?
Mhm.
So we create many policies that are not created by Neola many times, and they have been approved by this board. I'm having internet issues here, but I believe our legislative priorities policy is one that was created by the board, voted by the board, and not created by Neola. That's just one example. There are several others as well. And every single one of the policies that have been created and voted by this board have been vetted for legal sufficiency to ensure that we are legally sound and that we won't get essentially sued or, you know, have litigation issues later on. I mean, that's the whole point of having lawyers, to vet our policy, to read it and say, I recommend this, don't change that. I'm sure Ms. Shattuck can add if she needed to on that front, because I see her shaking her head there. So I don't have any issues with that. I do want to bring to your attention, Dr. Moore, a section here that, as I was listening to the comments, I do believe that this is a good time for staff and for Ms. Shattuck or whomever, you know, for our legal team to review this policy, this one that I have drafted. And obviously, I know you're going to compare and contrast that with what may be recommended from Neola. But there is a part in here that I did add, only because I, again, took it from other policies that I think would need another eye, and that would be human resources, possibly Ms. Krista Foley, you know, because, and it's on employee consequences. I just want to be completely transparent. I don't want to include anything in there that would violate contract or anything like that. So please, by all means, if that needs to be taken out, please give us the feedback on that. Obviously, again, this is just a draft. It is something that I wanted to create as a starting point for us to have this conversation. And anything else in there, I'm certainly open to, you know, hearing the feedback on it. So thank you for that, and board, thank you for your feedback.
Yeah, one other thing I'm going to say is some policies, you know, I don't think we're open to litigation as much as others. Right. My concern with this one is a student gets, I don't know, in big trouble because they used AI, and you got a parent now wanting to sue the school district because of our policy. So that's why I say this one needs to be airtight. Okay. Ms. Rosario, legal services request?
Yeah, so this has come to us before. This is let me see if I can get my thoughts together on this. So Ms. Shattuck came on a few years ago through Sniffen and Spellman. And then we got Mr. Ansbacher, who is no longer here, obviously, and then Ms. Shattuck came back. It's my understanding that Ms. Shattuck was replacing Mr. Ansbacher temporarily until the Sniffen and Spellman find someone else to take the spot on a more permanent basis. We have not heard back yet on this. I understand, I'm sure Dr. Moore will talk. I understand that they're trying to find someone. It's important for us to have a settled, you know, someone who is going to be our attorney forever and ever, which would be great, and not be in kind of like a holding pattern. So far, it's been okay. There haven't been any issues, but I just wanted to bring this up because I just think it is important. It is one of our attorney and Dr. Moore are the only two positions that we hire, that the board is responsible for hiring or firing. It is probably as important for us to discuss it. If we do nothing, we do nothing, but the options are to, what I put here is to discuss whether we should go out for bid for another firm, one that would ensure that we would have a, a legal attorney or an educational attorney that is here, that is our attorney, or not. But I just wanted to bring this up, bring this forward. This is the same item, what I have before you in the backup. It's not any different than what I put on the, on the board previously, in previous years. So I'm trying to do my transparent best in bringing this forward. It is a sensitive topic because obviously Ms. Shattuck is sitting here with us. But other than that, I think it's our responsibility to have that discussion. Dr. Moore?
Just to add to,
Yeah.
for any board discussion, we have reached out to one of the managing partners who, as Ms. Rosario said, who is in the process of pursuing another individual who could sit on the dais during board meetings. In terms of the law firm itself, there's a number of different attorneys that we work with, whether it be contracts, whether it be litigation, whether it be other services, and not dissatisfied with those services. So in my view, Sid has been gone for, I guess, this is the third board meeting that he's been gone. And the managing partner said it would be challenging, but I think we allow that, in my opinion, you allow that to play out, or determine how long you would like for that to play out before making any next steps. Because at the end of the day, I don't want a disruption if we don't have to have a disruption, and the firm itself is in fact in the process of looking for someone to do that work.
Okay, board members? Dr. Pasca?
I guess I appreciate the update on where the firm is. Do they have any kind of expected timeline, or is it, right now it's kind of open-ended?
I think the most appropriate response is it's in process. So
Yeah.
as quickly as possible. I don't think we're not being heard or not being listened to. It is a big seat to fill. There's not a major city next to us, and that was probably one of the biggest issues with Sid. Sid lived in Jacksonville or St. Johns County. So it is a process in making sure that there is a right match.
Yeah, and I would imagine it's potentially not a very liked position. So, good luck, I guess, finding someone.
All right, well, your lips, yeah. Okay.
Dr. Jones?
I just like where we are now. They said they're in the process. I've been very happy with Sniffen and Spellman and Ms. Shattuck.
Mr. McDonald?
No, same feeling. It's important for us to be on top of this, being one of two hires. So I think it's important to be considering it and looking at it. I know the process is underway with Sniffen, so I think that having a time frame for that is good, but at this point, it seems like we're in a reasonable position.
Yeah, I know last time we went out for, I don't know if it was an RFP or what it was called, but last time we went out to try to get an attorney, we had two firms that responded, your firm and Gray Robinson. And I remember the difference in the amount of cost was phenomenal difference. And so, that's one consideration. The other one is we only had two firms that applied. And we also put it out to anybody that would be interested in being hired as an attorney, and there was no response. So like you said, it's probably not the most popular position right now to be a school board attorney. And I appreciate what you do, Ms. Shattuck, and I appreciate your firm and everything they do to help us. And I certainly don't want to burn any bridges there, because I know that the school boards have to have an attorney. By law, we have to have an attorney for every meeting, for everything we do. And so I don't want to burn any bridges. I want to be very careful in how we proceed with this. And, I'm all for looking at what we need, but also letting the firm know that we do need somebody to be here for us the whole time and be committed. And if that turns out to be Ms. Shattuck, that's Ms. Shattuck, and we can proceed from there. But I think, since they're telling you they're working on it, I like to give them some time to do that.
I would, in a follow-up, I would just say, something else to consider, if not at this very moment, could be to retain the firm, the same firm, for the work that we are currently using them for contracts and for litigation, for whatever other things we use them for, and then maybe at some point go with another firm or another individual attorney for just the school board, sitting on school board meetings and being the school board attorney. I mean, that is another option that we can also consider. I know that might be pricey, but it's still an option. It might not be, by the way. I'm just saying that it might be. The other thing to keep in mind also, or maybe we should make that decision right now, is it seems that we all want to allow them to have the time, but how much time do we give? They've already been working on it for 3 months. How much time do we want to say is enough? That's the other thing. If we just leave it open-ended, or do we say, we'll give them another, I don't know, 2 or 3 months? I don't know how long you all, as a board, I'm bringing it out there for you all to decide, for us as a board to decide.
I
Yes.
just don't know if I want to put a timeline on this, because we might find somebody in 2 months, we might find 3 months, we might decide we want to stay with Bishadic. Because there are so few out there that want to do this, I'm not sure I'm good with the timeline on that. My thoughts.
Anyone else?
I think for now, personally, I think we've had a good discussion about it. I think we understand we're still looking and waiting and watching, and I think we'll just have to revisit it at some point.
I was going to say, probably having some sort of a framework makes sense. Perhaps setting a timeline to revisit it in 3 months or end of year might be appropriate, just so that it's on the radar and on an agenda to be followed up.
Yeah, I agree. I think bring it back up in December.
Okay.
And let's, because the other thing is timing of attorneys. We just gone through, the last time we went through the attorney change, it was also during the November, and we had a new board coming in. So, that's another thing to look at, is the board's going to be working with the attorney.
December.
I'm totally good with that. A few more months. It'll be here as quick as possible, Dr. Moore. I hope that you would have further conversations on, and let them know that this board is discussing it, and that this is a priority for us, by consensus, I mean. The other thing that I would also suggest is, or rather, let me just, if you could remember to put it on the agenda in December, if nothing has happened, and give us some updates on this along the, I don't know who that would be. That's, you looked across the, you looked across the aisle. This way, the same documents, and we'll just have this discussion then. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'm going to adjourn the workshop. The time is 2:12.